as physical space, or at least like the space of our body. I mean, because it transfers from itself to the sentient body.
Right.
Which, I remember Cartesian duality. I don't want into that kind of like.
Right, because Descartes thinks that it's like a pituitary gland that it kind of meets.
Pineal gland?
Pineal gland. Pineal gland, sorry. It's kind of weird. Right, Descartes is a genius. I'm loath to say he's wrong. I think he's wrong on that.
Control sleep cycles.
What?
It controls sleep cycles.
Right.
Yeah, but it's also in the center of the brain, right?
But here's the thing, right? For Gregory, my soul is as much my pinky as it is my brain. Descartes would have thought that was bizarre. What?
Oh, you said brain. Pinky the brain.
There's got to be something to that. Talk about that.
Uncovering philosophies in old kids' TV shows.
These guys are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. These guys are like making these shows. Yeah. Anyway,
That's what we're talking about. Essence and substance.
This is what
I think that. So that, what does it mean to be you? That's the kind of question the soul answers. That's not the kind of question that your brain answers. That's not the kind of question that your body alone answers. But your body and your brain and your mind are all part of that answer. What else? So on page 8, he gives us another, kind of builds on the definition a little bit. Upon this, I recur to the definition, second full paragraph, third paragraph. Upon this, I returned to the definition which she had previously given of the soul, and I said that, to my thinking, her definition had not indicated distinctly enough all the powers of the soul, which are a matter of observation. It declares that the soul to be an intellectual essence which imparts to the organic body a force of life by which the senses operate. Now, the soul is not thus operative only in our scientific and speculative intellect. It does not produce results in that world only, or employ the organs of sense only for this, their natural work. On the contrary, we observe in our nature many emotions of desire and many of anger, and both these exist as qualities of our kind, and we see both of them in their manifestation, displaying further many more subtle differences. There are many states, for instance, which are occasioned by desire. So, our emotions, our feelings, all of these are part of our soul. And, when you think about it, these are not just brain functions. They're also body functions. When we get nervous, our hands sweat, kind of thing. Now, obviously, there's an interaction between our minds and our bodies there. But for Gregory, well, yeah, of course there is, because it's all kind of part of your soul at work. It's not. If our idea of the soul is like this little ghost inside of us, well, Gregory doesn't think that. That somehow existed before us and somehow existed after us. But it's not quite. He certainly doesn't think it exists before us. We are conceived or whatever. As for thinking after us, we'll get to that in a second. Okay. What else about the soul and the kind of relationship to the body? I think is the next membrane thing to Evan's question.
Yeah, I think we said, I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it's somewhere that, what is the nature of the soul in comparison to the body? And I don't even know if this is his argument, but he said that it can be said that the soul is something within a membrane, and so I guess that would imply that it's sort of separate from the body.
It's right on page 2.
Like a bubble thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just pretty.
Where are you on the page?
Like human life is like a bubble.
So the last paragraph on page 2, like 2/3.
The teacher.
Yeah, to him, the visible was the limit of existence. He made our senses those lines?
The sentence right before that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. There he's quoting Epicurus. Or this is the big. So so there's Plato's idea, which you guys know a little bit about now. The other idea was Epicurus also had an idea. He said, like, well, soul talk is silly. Like, Epicurus was a real hardcore materialist, like, no two ways about it. And then the Stoics, they kind of thought of the world soul, that everything kind of participates in this world soul, that even individuation doesn't quite make sense in the kind of Stoic picture. So there he's quoting, there he's talking about Epicurus, this kind of the whole idea.
Okay.
Yeah. What about the kind of evolutionary stuff? The toast question.
Does he actually say?
No, he never says evolution, but he references,
Right, yeah.
I forgot who's later on in the result.
What's something specific that's in the
This is Bruce. He's a little Bruce. Yes, that.
bottom of page 10.
Good.
The sentence towards the bottom, after the foundations of the universe were laid.
Yeah. After the foundations of the universe were laid, as the history records, man did not appear on earth at once, but the creation of the brutes preceded his, and plants preceded them. And that's just Genesis chapter 1. Thereby, Scripture shows that the vital force blended with the world of matter according to gradation. First, it infused itself into insensate nature, and it continued of this advanced into the sentient world, and then ascended to intelligent and rational beings. Accordingly, while all existing things must be either corporeal or spiritual, the former are divided into the animate and inanimate. By animate, I mean possessed of life, and the things possessed of life, some have it with sensation, the rest have no sensation. Again, of these sentient things, some have reason, the rest have not. So, again, all living things have souls insofar as they're living. But the soul isn't something you can see for Gregory. You can see bodies, but again, when you talk about who you are, obviously you have to kind of see yourself. You know, your physical appearance is important, but if your physical appearance changes, you're still yourself. Right? So these are the kinds of things he's talking about. The one way to put it, he doesn't quite use this language, but one way to put it, and you might have talked about this already, is that the soul is in a way kind of emergent. That let's put it this way, it's emergent and relational. So what the soul is in a way how you relate to everything else. How you are you, insofar as you're relatable to other things. Does that make sense?
Do you guys remember that term emergent? It came up in the seminar back in the fall. I want to say Dr. Corona was the one who brought it up. That consciousness is sometimes often, in fact, understood as an emergent phenomenon. Do you remember what he meant by that?
Was that like that you can't understand consciousness by observing the most minute pieces? Like you have to look at it as the whole of consciousness? Sort of?
Yes.
It's something that comes out of the interworkings of all the mental phenomena.
Yeah, that even if you took all the component pieces and put them together in the same spot, you still wouldn't have consciousness. It's the dynamic or the process, the interaction that creates the thing, but it's not a thing.
Well, think about it this way.
It's not a thing by itself, but that's.
Well, let's think about it this way. Good. So, business is not the start, right? Go to Yankee Stadium. You have, if you just have like Derek Jeter and Jose Posada like playing catch in left field, you don't have a baseball game. Right? If you have Derek Jeter and Jose Posada, well, let's imagine last year, Derek Jeter throwing the ball to Jose Posada in a game, right? Like tag somebody out at home on a relay play. Right? Where's the baseball game? The baseball game's everywhere. Exactly. Right? Now, does it matter if, when they play the Red Sox, the stadium's full, but when they play the A's, nobody's there? No. It's still a baseball game, even though there are these changes. Right? But you can't point to one aspect and say, like, baseball game. Right? You can't point to somebody hitting the ball and say baseball game. In the same way that if I were to throw a ball right now and hit the chair back there, well, that wouldn't be a strike. Why? Because a strike only happens when you're in a baseball game and there's an umpire calling it. Right? If we think about the soul, then, I think that's kind of the way Gregory thinks about the soul, which is to say that it's in this relationship with everything else. Now, the primary relationship, and this gets to Dave's question, in a sense, the human being's kind of major relationship is to God. So, in one way, what the soul is the conduit for your relationship to God. Insofar as God is simple and immaterial, the soul is simple and immaterial. Different things soul's created and God isn't. Right? And so, at one point he says, well, the soul is like God. Right? Like knows like. That's one of the ways human beings come to know God. Well, through the soul. Right? That's the kind of conduit, as I said, for this interaction. Now, in one way the soul doesn't rise again, right? Because that relationship with God always exists. Right? If we think of God as being it's a little tricky to talk about God in time, but one way to do it is think that God always is in this eternal present. So God is always in relationship with everything created. Right? And so that relationship in a deep way is the soul. Notice when he asks her about, well, what about these things where Jesus talks about Lazarus and people burning in Hades and all this stuff? She said, well, they can't be burning because they have bodies. Right? What that means is they've divided themselves away from God. Right? Which is kind of a neat idea, I think. That the scary part of hell, for example, is not the burning. The scary part of hell is to divide yourself and turn away from God. And because God is always in this eternal present with your soul, well, there'll come a time again, Christians believe, that all of those atoms that created you will somehow reform and somehow be you again. Now, you're in a slightly different form. Your body will be a little different, it seems. But that's the important part of the soul. Like, if the idea is like, oh, your soul's in heaven and you're in a better place now, well, what that means, he wants to say, is something like, God hasn't forgotten you. You're still in relationship with God because God is always interacting with you in this kind of eternal present. There will come a time again, Karina says, when all of your atoms will come up and form you again. That's the important part. So in a way, the soul doesn't resurrect, the body resurrects. And what resurrection means is that kind of recreation. Right? He's getting this from Paul and Christ's resurrected body and stuff. The point is not, well, can this be philosophically proven? The point instead is this complete nonsense? And if you can show that it's not complete nonsense, then you can show it's plausible and like the biblical account isn't just wrong. Whereas he does think some readings of the Bible just are wrong because they don't make any sense. Is that helpful on that? Go ahead.
So that's kind of getting into like the glorified body.
Sure.
I mean, I think that's definitely a confusing point
Sure.
for me. So
That's a confusing one.
does that imply that there is a time when there is no you, that like your soul doesn't exist at some point before the body is resurrected?
Sure. The soul always exists after you're born. Right?